Hello, hello everybody, and welcome to the 2024 Employment Hero SME Sentiment Report. Um, there's a big year ahead of us, and we're excited to share a lot of information from a survey of over 500 SMEs in Singapore who are our clients. The overarching theme is positivity, which is great to see. So we're really excited to be able to bring this today to you. My name is Kevin Fitzgerald. I'm the Managing Director of Employment Hero in Asia. I live in Singapore, and I'm delighted to be able to share this session with a very esteemed professional who is a LinkedIn top voice, a well-being and branding strategist for SMEs. Please welcome me with Ratna Juwita. Ratna, I'd love to give a few words at the start to share a little bit more about your story and what you're keen to share with our tune-ins today.
Hi everyone. Hi Kevin. Thank you so much for having me today. Such an honor and privilege to be here. So I am Ratna. I'm the founder and CEO of the Mind Jam. We are basically a mission-driven learning and development organization where we aim to empower individuals and organizations to elevate their well-being as the strategies for personal success. And yeah, the reason why I'm super passionate about this topic is also because, coming through my own personal struggles of navigating life difficulties and finally found out something that really brings me joy and purpose. And I really wanted to inspire more people using well-being as a way to help them in performing better at work. And in the past, of course, before I come up and doing something on my own, I used to work in the tertiary educations where we work closely with the employers to hire the right talent, and also helping the students to find their career aspirations as well. And that's the reason why I'm really passionate about doing this work, because that comes across from my past work experiences, and how I hope to be able to share some insights and to everyone today about employer branding as well as talent attraction for SME leaders. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant, brilliant. It's so good to have you here. Today's agenda will be obviously sharing the overview and results from our survey in Singapore. We'll bring you fresh insights and industry sharing from, I'd love to give my opinion. I know Ratna will be sharing hers, and then we'll deep dive into growth opportunities for your business in the new year. We really, really appreciate and understand SMEs and the challenges that they have. So we hope that you get a lot of value over what we're going to share today. I'll just play this video and you can scan to download the full report. I'm sure everybody is scrambling for their phones to scan the QR code, so I'll give a few more seconds. I wanted to give a little bit about housekeeping as well. We want you to add in your questions, comments into the Q&A box. We will try and address as many as possible towards the end of today's session. And if we don't, we do promise that we will follow up by email to share our views and answers on those questions that you sent through. So please don't hold back in coming forward and ask us anything that you would like. So where can we start? Okay, so we're going to have 5 insights today, and one of how we've structured this report is really looking at how do people feel at the start. What are their confidence levels about business for 2024, and what does that actually mean for their businesses as they navigate 2024? We know we've had a few rough years. But maybe there's one thing that we've actually learned in those years to really help our businesses, and that's sharpening up operations, really identifying, the key things in the business that need the most focus. And we, from speaking to our SME clients in Singapore, understand that as part of that process, which has been quite challenging, it's turned our businesses to be in a much better shape. And that has helped to feed some of the confidence. And personally, I was quite surprised to see the level of positivity and confidence in Singapore from Singaporean SMEs. It's actually really refreshing to see this, because the confidence levels and the belief that things are going to be better can sometimes attract better outcomes to your business as well. So it's all about having a positive mental attitude for 2024. You can see from the statistics that again, our small businesses, so micro under 30 employees, are somewhat confident or extremely confident, like the highest proportion. That is actually really refreshing to see, because these are the businesses that are, maybe new in their years of trading, or will always be of that size because of the structure of their business. But there is a lot of confidence at that level, and it's really, really good to see it. So as we go through the chain, in terms of size of businesses based on employee headcount, the group that's 31 to 200 employees must know some things that we don't know. 38% are extremely confident in terms of their growth prospects for 2024. And we're trying to dig deeper on this. But a lot of it, the feedback that's come through the report, is that they have felt like they've come through a rough few years. They feel like their business is in much better shape. They've really built a lot of strong relationships with their customers and are building a bigger customer base and even a different service line. So there's confidence there that's built on facts rather than being blind to the feeling. So that was a really, really big thing for me to read when I saw the results coming back. I was really, really impressed and surprised and happy, that our clients are actually feeling this. The predictions, so the crystal ball of SME leaders on the performance of Singapore economy. Having lived in Singapore for a long time and lived in other countries around the world, what the country is capable of is up there, really in the top countries in the world in terms of economic performance and executing on opportunity, and been really clear and focused over what's needed to develop the economy. Ratna, you've spent a lot of time, obviously around Southeast Asia. You grew up here. I didn't. I come into Singapore and see all these great things. But from your perspective as a business owner, do you agree with the predictions that our clients in the survey? Are you feeling really, positive about Singapore economy growth in 2024?
Yeah, well, I think so. I think, having spoken to some of the SME leaders in Singapore as well, I noticed that many of their business actually growing, and they're looking to grow even more in 2024. So I'm feeling hopeful. And yeah, hopefully, despite of the inflation and the rising costs as well, I hope that, the SME business owners can have that, um the ability to really grow their business as well.
Yeah, I think we're all hoping, for a big lift this year. The reality is, from the statistics, is that 43% of our micro and small businesses, which are up to 30 employees in Singapore, are not feeling the same way. And from speaking with these SMEs, it's really down to a lot more apprehension around where their business could go, and also trying to understand is, even if the Singapore economy grows as a whole, will they get a piece of it? Like, will they really be able to capture some of that growth? And we'll talk about strategies with Ratna later today around talent, employment, retention, because a lot of these businesses rely even more so on talent in their business to deliver the growth that they expect. So there's some kind of layers to all of these feelings, which we'll explain a little bit more. So opportunities for SMEs. I think a lot of this has been around for quite a while. Like you'll see the chart on the right hand side lists out many things that I'm sure many of you tuning in today will feel. Digitization, transformation. I think Singapore SMEs are really up there globally in terms of what they've digitized in the last 5 years, and this has been supported by government grants like Start Digital and PSG to really take the cost worry out of digitization. But I would call that the first phase that's happened over the last 5 years. Now we're really looking at artificial intelligence and automation, and the reality is it's in our lives everywhere we look. We might not actually understand or see it, but platforms, technology systems, services that you interact with um, from all industries are using some form of AI in the background. An example would be a chatbot or a help support center chatbot on the website for a service or product that you're looking to use. A lot of that is AI driven, and it just shows the extent of the opportunity. And AI is in its very, very early years. We know ourselves at Employment Hero, we always make sure that we purposely view ourselves as behind the curve so that we're always searching for ways to make the next jump and bring that into our product. SMEs forming strategic alliance and partnerships. For me, I think that is a great opportunity because it's an extension of your workforce. Like a partnership where both parties win is incredibly powerful for both sides. A partnership that is exciting at the start but quickly dwindles is sadly more common than people realize. And the reason for that is there's a lot of effort gone into winning the partnership and signing an agreement and taking a really nice photograph to post on social media. But a lot of businesses really fail with the execution of a partnership because there's a lack of alignment. So it was really interesting to see that SMEs see this as an opportunity. And one of the things I do wonder is, can SMEs, up to maybe 50 staff, actually really execute very well on a strategic alliance and partnership? Because it does take a huge amount of effort, certainly in the first 1 year, 2 year, and you might not see the results straight away. And right now, I'd love your view on this. Like, how does an SME, maybe some of your clients, view this opportunity, and in reality, do they actually have the resource to execute on a great partnership or strategic alliance?
I think that's a great question, Kevin. I personally feel that I think we are very blessed to be living in Singapore because there is so many funding that is being given to SME leaders, you name it, right? Like digital transformation, branding, marketing, and stuff like that. And what are the trends that I've been seeing in some of my friends who also, run business, SME owners as well. I think they have been leveraging quite a lot on this type of funding from, WSG, SSG, or even
Mm.
different organizations that really support such kind of funding for SME leaders to really grow their business. So, and I think that's really one of the resources that we can really tap into with regards to, growing and transforming the organizations. And coming back to your questions about strategic partnership and stuff like that, I think it will take a bit more time to really see that kind of results really happens. Just like, branding and marketing, right? You don't
Mm.
do it right now and then really see the results straight away. It will take,
Yeah,
maybe a few months or even a year to really see the effort that we put in really come into fruition. So I think, yeah, it's really a long game, I would say. Yeah, I would
yeah,
also felt that for my own business as well, right? Like, some of the branding and marketing effort that I've put in like 1 year back only can be seen like now, like people started reaching out and all that. Of course, along the way, there is also a lot of all this as well.
Mm,
But I think it's really about playing the long game and having
mm.
the patience to be able to really see through the results and not giving up along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, great advice. Um, Number three there, embracing remote and flexible working models. We'll talk more later to Ratna around employee strategies and retention, but we can discuss this one a bit more, and I can share a bit more about Employment Hero because we are actually 100% remote business, and we have almost 1,000 staff around the globe. So we can touch on that a bit later. The No surprise again. I think top three challenges: rising costs, inflation. Sadly, it's in all of our lives, personally, professionally, and it's something we all have to deal with. So I always feel that in a scenario when you've got no choice, the best thing to do is start to get into solution mode as quickly as possible. So we do know that SME's been really focused on cost control measures and workforce optimization, finding new suppliers, and even expanding, product and service lines. But something that we've really noticed is that more and more are starting to invest in staff learning and development, and really that that move is a very good strategic move for an SME to make. We do understand that it's quite challenging for an SME to create a program of work for staff development and retention, but the cost of losing someone and then hiring someone and then getting into that place where you got to give the new person some time to come up to speed. It's actually much more um, of a it's much more of a better business decision to make is to actually keep the people in the business who you want to keep and develop them. And I know this is something that's really close to Ratna's heart and mine as well, because when people leave a business, it's almost like there's regret. There's no regret, but like to find new talent to replace that person in SME is actually really, really challenging. So we will delve deeper into how actually achieve this later in this session. We do see smaller businesses are more apprehensive. They're definitely more concerned, and they felt like they've struggled more in the past year. And we will touch on later today, like what strategies can they bring into their business to remove some of those struggles. If you're a business tuning in today that has less than 30 employees or less than 20 or less than 10, we totally understand that it's incredibly important that the talent in your business is operating efficiently, delivering impact. And, when I think about a business with 10 people, one person is 10% of that business. Two people is 20%. So if they're not delivering or you lose them, to a different company or they leave, that leaves a big hole. But if you're a company with 100 people and one person leaves or two people leave, that's only 2% compared to 20%. And I really feel that retention and development is going to help businesses like this. So we have seen our smaller SMEs in Singapore really, really find like it a lot more difficulty in navigating the business landscape, and a lot of it comes back to talent. So some of the insights in summary is like rising costs or inflation, right? Like we definitely know this, and there's been challenges across the board. Micro businesses that are leaner are definitely facing challenges, and medium-sized businesses are also battling with retention and upskilling. And what we're hearing as well is that when it's a bit tougher in the economy, SMEs, like the medium-sized businesses, they tend to drop their focus on employee development programs. And sometimes it's not a specific choice. They're just too busy trying to win revenue and, build a business. And it's a real kind of conundrum for businesses, because as soon as they start doing that, and focusing more on growing the business, which is critical, the employees are kind of left with a vacuum of, oh, I'm not getting the development that I expected to have. And comparing to last year when I had really good development programs. But that is a real risk that we wanted to share with businesses today. And having a defined development strategy for a company of up to 100 staff or up to 200, I think is absolutely critical for SMEs nowadays. How can we beat inflation and rising costs? Making the right decisions in your business is based off a few things. One is having the right data. Two is understanding that data really well. And three is using your experience and what I call your gut feeling to make the right choices, because ultimately that's what leaders need to do. They need to actually understand the mechanics of their business, the influences on their business, and then make the right decisions. Leveraging technology, whether that's accounting software, HR payroll software, CRM, anything that can streamline your business at an affordable cost, I think is a big investment, because technology is not about replacing tasks. It's actually about looking for ways to leverage benefits and to go faster, and also remove the mental burden of administration and having to think about your task list when it's 100 things, because then it's quite hard to identify what's the most important. If technology can take 80% of them off you, you can focus on the top 20. I'm delighted today to have Ratna, our specialist in employer branding and employee retention, because it is a big focus. People in SMEs are absolutely critical to the SME, and SMEs and economies are absolutely critical to the economy. So there is a bigger play and a bigger picture impact here. So speaking of employer branding and retention, we do have Ratna here today. She is the founder and CEO of the MindGem, Wellbeing and Branding Strategist and LinkedIn Top Voice. I'm going to hand over the reins to Ratna, who's going to share her insights. I know she's got lots of great tips for our listeners today. So Ratna, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I really love your insights about some of the what's happening in the SME landscape in Singapore. And I think many of us can really take away a lot of insights and implement that in our business as well. So thanks for the privilege. And hi, everyone. So I am really excited to be here. And I think the topic today, we are going to cover a bit more about employer branding and talent management. Like what I mentioned earlier, I've spent quite a bit. If you're wondering, I'm Indonesian. I've spent quite a bit of years here in Singapore, and even before coming here, I used to struggle. Even when I come here, I used to struggle a lot with navigating the Singapore culture and all that. But having spent almost 2 decades of my life here in Singapore, I felt strongly connected to Singapore. And having said that as well, I have always, in the early years, I've spent most of my careers as well working for the SMEs. And that's the reason why I actually really like to be working in the SMEs, because I get exposures to different areas, and that's where I actually build my skills and capabilities to be able to also, build my own business right now as well. And yeah, given my past experiences in the tertiary educations where I partner with employers to build their employer brand so that they can also attract the right talent for their business as well. That's the reason why I'm really passionate about speaking about this topic as well. So let's dive into what we are going to cover today. Basically, there are 3 areas that we are going to cover to help you in basically employer branding as well as talent retention, so that you can not only attract the right talent, but make them never want to leave unless it's really a vacation, of course, right? Yeah, so let's get started and dive into the 3 areas. So the first one, we are looking into the key challenges the first slide. Yeah, the key challenges in talent management, covering the talent strategies and retention, as well as the role of employer branding in talent management. So at the end of these sessions, you will be able to get the next outcomes. These are the 3 outcomes that we are going to basically cover in our sessions today. Actionable, understanding the landscape of SME talent management in Singapore, strategies to attract and retain top talents, as well as elevating your employer brand to attract top talents as well. And I think let's get to the heart of what makes employees tick, click, and stick with your organizations. And having said that, talking to so many SME business owners, I realized that many organizations really struggle with attracting and retaining the right talent. And because of that, right, we also wanted to dive deeper into what are the struggles that basically they are experiencing, right? So the first key challenges that in talent management, especially for SME leaders, would be the first one will be competitive market for top talent, because SME need to compete with larger organizations for the same pool of talent, right? And top talents looks for the best opportunities, which means that SME must really find compelling ways to really stand out, right? And the second one is a toxic workplace practices, which is really very important for leaders, right, to be able to really build a positive culture that emphasize respect, collaborations, as well as employee well-being, so that you can attract the right talent. I think the recent studies by Forbes, they mentioned that actually nowadays the talent are looking for a health and well-being package even before they confirm their job offer. So that's the reason why it's so important to, think about the strategies on how we can use that, the evolving of employee expectations in attracting talents. Last but not least is poor people management practice. The ability to effectively manage, motivate, and develop employees is really very important to be able to also, reduce turnover, manage low morale, as well as, also start to build the employer brand so that we can attract the right talent. Yeah. So let's take a look at the Gen Z, right? According to the recent studies by PwC, Gen Z and millennials currently make up approximately about 38% of the global workforce, which is 1/3 of the global workforce. And this percentage will basically rise to about 58% by 2030. So that's the reason why let's take a look at the typical what the Gen Z are looking for when they are looking out for a job, right? So let's take a look at Anna, right? Anna, she's smart, talented, and looking for a job which has, competitive compensation. Basically, they want a salary, not just numbers, but also values it brings to their lives as well. And purpose-driven work, basically, they wanted to contribute to something bigger than themselves, work that has also meaningful impact. Flexibility in terms of, the ability to work around their life, not the other way around somehow. And the next one will be autonomy, having the freedom to really make decisions and take ownership of their work. The next one is value-driven organizations that is aligned with their core values and resonates with their personal beliefs. And the next one is work-life harmony, right? A lot of people, sharing about work-life balance. I would call it work-life integration or harmony, because our work is such a big part of our life, right? And I think it's important to also integrate that into our life and making it in such a way that it's just we are living harmoniously with work and life together. And last but not least is to have a career progressions in terms of having a clear opportunities for growth and advancements within the company as well. So yeah, so this is basically what the Gen Z and the millennials are looking for.
I'm looking for, yeah.
Yes,
Right,
and
I'm gonna jump in there with a question actually,
yes,
because I think this is great because for our listeners today and our guests, they can get a checklist, you know, of the things that the talent is looking for. And I would encourage all of them to see does anything like this appear on their website, right? Like on their social media pages, because if it doesn't, is it fair to say that the Gen Z would just bypass them pretty quickly when they're looking for opportunities in that company?
yeah, exactly. I think like what you mentioned as well, like a lot of companies are also missing this particular words or showcasing what the company's culture, mission, and vision to be able to also attract talents, right? And I think it's very important to highlight all these thing in, can be your website or your digital platform to be able to really attract the right talent for the organizations as well. Yeah. And I'm
Yeah, I
curious to
agree.
also
Mm.
hear
Mm.
your thoughts on this as well in terms of like what kind of like trends do you see in Gen Z, hiring Gen Z or even millennials nowadays? Is that similar
Yeah,
patterns that you see?
there's definitely like, and I love that Gen Zs are expressing themselves with clarity, like in what they want. Um, you know, I can see both sides. Okay, so I'm constantly hiring people. We're always looking to find the best talent, and I feel like as Gen Z has developed and become much more expressive with clarity, um, there's probably a little bit of an imbalance in terms of, you know, them making sure that they also can state well what they offer. Um, the reason why I think there's an imbalance is for a long time, it wasn't really clear, you know, to people like what does this typical candidate, you know, really want, and I feel like it's maybe been over indexed a little bit. So when I put on my business leader hat and speak to SMEs, an SME is looking out to the market for someone that can bring value to their business, but they're also there's a misbalance because they're not expressing the list of things here. So
Yes.
there's this constant mismatch going on,
Yeah.
um, and one party is out there saying, "I need this, this, and this," and the other party is also out there saying, "I need this, this, and this," and no one's saying, but I can offer, you know, and this is what we offer. And so I think that needs to evolve, you know, like, and I think it can start with the SMEs who are hiring because it's so critical to them to be able to attract talent like this. And there's clearly a lot of great talent um, available in the market. So yeah, encouraging everybody who's listening today to um, take a fresh eyes approach to your website, your careers page, your social media pages, and maybe use this list as a checklist to go through and say, do we talk about this? Or do we talk about ourselves too much? Or does our job descriptions reflect these things? Yeah. And I think that's going to help.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And we're just talking to one of the SME business leaders and who is super active in communicating that on social media. And he told me that he has no problem attracting talent. In fact, a lot of people are actually like reaching out to him and it's like, hey, do you have any openings?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting that like if you are able to communicate your all these values very clearly, it helps you to really attract talents as well.
Mm.
Yeah, great. Let's go to the next one. Next one. Yeah. So let's take a look at the talent framework. We are going to cover, because of limited time, we are going to cover a bit more on the attraction and retaining strategies. We will not cover on the selection part. So let's go into the solutions of the one that we have covered earlier in terms of the key challenges that many SME leaders are facing in terms of attraction and retention. So the three attraction and retention strategies. The first one is communication. I think it's very essential for business leaders, SME owners to build a transparent and engaging interactions with potential and current employees, like what I mentioned earlier, like one of the SME business leaders have been communicating that even in social media. And because of that, people actually reaching out to him to see if there is any opportunities that he can offer, right? I think that's the first one. The second one is organizational culture. Basically, we all want to work in a company that aligns with our values. And if the organization can actually show the culture that is safe, that, and promotes respect and collaborations, people are usually attracted to such companies as well. And the third one is purpose and impact-driven leadership. So basically, leadership that inspires, sense of purpose, demonstrating the impact of work, also will be able to attract talents as well. So let's dive deeper into the communication part. So like what I mentioned about open and transparent communication and ongoing feedback, according to a statistic, 59% of Generation Gen Z respondents want feedback several times a week. So basically, they really want feedback. And I think not many organizations are also doing such thing. So I think I would like to encourage all the SME leaders to really double down on having a one-to-one sessions and ongoing feedback um, with your team members, right? And the third one is the career development conversation. I think not many, business owners are also doing that in such a way because they will feel afraid of the employees will leave the companies and all that. And I think I recently heard from someone shared that if you don't have if you don't provide a safe space for the employees to talk to you about their concerns and needs, right, they are going to talk about that with the recruiters. So that's the big struggles and a real challenge, right? And I think it's very important for the employers are also having to build the safe culture for employees to actually speak about what are the concerns and how can they also improve in their career as well. Yeah. So the next one, let's take a look at the one of the case studies of Mr. Singh, who is the CEO of Spaceside Group. They are corporate affairs and public policy organizations. Basically, he as a CEO, he also take a time to do a one-on-one meetings with the entire team to actually find out a bit more about work-related issues and how he can basically support the teams as well. And I think having created such culture will be able to also help him in retaining talents as well. So the second one is really about organizational culture, right? I think we spoke a little bit more about, creating a psychologically safe culture where employees feel safe to speak up about their concerns, about their career aspirations, and how can they basically see themselves growing in the organizations as well. And I think the last but not least is to really celebrate small wins. And I think it's important for employers to also acknowledge and give recognition and reward to the employees who perform at work, right? It doesn't need to be a big things, but it's just like a say thank you for for completing this project. It was really a wonderful job, right? I think it makes employees feel valued as well. And I think that's a small little things that many of business owners potentially miss it. But I think just trying to double down on celebrating small wins and really acknowledging your team members. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel really strongly about that because sometimes people are waiting for the bigger things to
Yeah.
then celebrate. And the reality is, like, there might be one of them a week or a month or a quarter, and or depending on the business you're in, it could be in a year, like if it's a big project.
Yeah.
But from the 20 years of time that I've been working now, sometimes the small wins are just that reminder to say, you're doing really well, keep going, and they tend to compound, like, and it's actually a real challenge, I think, for a leader as well, like, because it can always be there's a lot of small wins all the time. So you need a tool or a way to remind, because sadly we forget these things sometimes, right? Like, there's so much happening, and it goes into take a list, and I'll do this later to make sure I celebrate. But having a way to do it quickly and genuinely, like, I think is really, really important. So I think that is actually a big one. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. Just to cover a bit more about purpose and impact-driven jobs and leadership, I think um, some research have shown that 80% of Gen Z wants a purpose-driven jobs that better aligns with their values. And that's the reason why let's take a look at some of the case studies we have. I think if you all know that Rachel Lim, the co-founder of Love Bonito, has been such a empowering women figures, right, in the space that she leads with purpose. She also creates a culture of trust and psychologically safe culture where employees are empowered to speak up as well. And I think she also a very strong advocate for a culture that is continuous learning. And I think she launched Reg Reflex, where she interviews, thought leaders in the areas of personal growth to also empower more people to learn about personal development and career growth as well. And I think having said that as well, it's not so much focusing on just financial success, but also how can she use Love Bonito as a platform to also make a meaningful difference in the world as well. And I think people really buy into her visions, her big mission about empowering women through her company, right? And I think that's very, very good examples of how you can potentially attract and retain talents. Yeah. And let's take a look at the role of employer branding in talent management. Um, so what is employer branding, right? So we can go to the next slides. It's basically how your business market itself to prospective talent and for your own employees as well. It's really about communicating your mission, your values, your culture, your personality, so that people who share the same values, mission, personality is attracted to you. So that's really basically the essence of employer branding. And I think it's important to build a positive employer brand to communicate that with the people inside as well as externally, so that you can attract and retain talents for your organizations.
Yeah, I feel really strongly about this as well. And when we think about and speak to our SME clients, they always find it difficult to attract talent. We spoke earlier around the needs and desires of a Gen Z job seeker versus an SME, and maybe where the communication breaks down. But thinking about sales, like, in the importance of storytelling and the structure of a story and bringing it together. SMEs have an opportunity to do that, and really, like, share their purpose and tell people who they are and what they stand for. And I think someone like yourself could really help our listeners in trying to actually structure that and bring it to life. Because I think that would actually really help, and it forms the brand, like, and Rachel, I love Benito is a great example. Um, I don't buy any of our products or services, but I know who she is, and it's because I can see her. She's out there. She's telling her story, and that is very impressive because a lot of SMEs kind of push themselves down and say, "Oh, I can't do that," or "That's not, that's not achievable." Um, but actually, storytelling has been around for thousands of years, and it's incredibly powerful. So, really encourage all of our listeners today to think about like your own story, and how you can formulate that, and reach out to Ratna, if you need any more professional advice on this.
Thank you, Kevin. I totally agree with you in terms of really spotlighting your stories and how it can really draw people into buying into your vision and missions. And yeah, really, it's really very powerful tools of employer branding and talent attraction. Yeah. And yes, according to the recent Randstad study, companies with stronger employer brands experience 1 to 2 times faster hiring time. And of course, candidates doesn't want to work for a company with a bad reputation despite a higher salary. So I think that's very important that's the reason why, SME business owners should really build your positive employer brand. Yeah. And yeah, the benefit of employer branding is to really attract and retain talents. It also influence your bottom line results as well, because your company will be a great place to work and people are much more willing to actually refer their friends to also work for your
Mm,
organizations as well. And I think many companies are also implementing, referral fees schemes where they can basically refer their friends or relatives
mm.
or whoever to actually join the organizations as well. Last but not least is to also engage your employee. Yeah, so that's basically the benefit of employer branding if you do it correctly as well. I'm curious to also hear from your thoughts, Kevin. Like, what's your thoughts on how can we also encourage more SME leaders, right, to really build their employer brand?
Yeah, I think I feel really strongly about the power of storytelling. It might be
Mm.
because I'm Irish, and we come from a culture where storytelling is incredibly powerful. And it's encouraged throughout your life, right? Like, and I can see the benefits of it. Um, I think what struck me from this one is the employee engagement because um, generally SMEs, the bosses, everyone that works there is quite busy every day, and
Yeah.
they rarely get time to pause and discuss or give people an opportunity to talk, and that can be difficult to really put that in place because if you're an employee in an SME who suddenly starts this thing called employee engagement and the boss wants to talk to you about your thoughts and your feelings, you're probably going to be like a clam, right? Like, and
Don't
kind
talk
of,
to me, right?
yeah, and they're like, oh my god, what's happening? And it can be quite jarring, and different for people. So one of the one of the things that we've seen successful is giving people a method and a channel of communication that's private and confidential and anonymous, to send
Mhm.
feedback through, and that that can be done through technology, and that then becomes a bit jarring sometimes for the bosses because they get anonymous feedback through on feedback around all the things that are wrong in the business, you know.
Right,
But
right.
I think it's a great starting point then to take that information and start to have team discussions and say, hey, you know, um, we hear you. Like, there's suggestions for improvements here. There's call outs to say this is not working, but we're still doing this. Like, why are we doing it? And effectively, what you're going through is a phase of creating a way for people to be able to voice their thoughts and then create a channel for discussion, which could be a one to one or a team meeting. And some of the things that I do, if I get anonymous feedback through the Employment Hero platform, I don't know who it's from, right? Like, and that's fine. Um, but I will try and bring it up in all my one-on-ones, not to ask, did you say this? Because that's quite confronting, but what do you think about this project or what do you think about this strategy? And I just want to hear them because generally I find if one person sends through the feedback, probably multiple people feel a similar way.
Yeah.
And I just find it so powerful to be able to figure things out. And again, we all work so fast and are always looking ahead. Like we just need to pause sometimes and stop and talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so true. And I think I really agree with your thoughts on giving them the platform to be able to use that as a way of, giving feedback, not somehow to like, you know, to direct in such ways because like
Yeah.
different cultures will take this kind of like one-to-one a bit differently as well. And I think having that
Yeah.
platform enables people to have a bit more courage to speak up as well.
Yeah.
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 And I think even in the town halls and all that, we realize that when it becomes anonymous, people are like started to, throw out a lot of things, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
in a
But
way, safe
it's so
space,
good.
but
Yeah.
also constructive at the same time too.
Yeah. I appreciate it because I call it the direct truth. So it's not sugar coated.
Yeah.
It's very specific generally. And it's great for me because then I go, well, I need to action this. Like we need to fix this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
I know
Yes.
you're
So
going to talk about a bit more branding and the face behind companies. So over to you.
exactly. Yeah. So I think a lot of times, like if we take a look at like, Rachel, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, right? I think many of these leaders have been showing, their personal brand as well behind the brands. And I think a lot of companies, the missing link is really about a lot of employers uh, um, promoting about the employer in such a way, but they don't really showcase the people behind it. And I think that's a missing link. And I think it's also important to really tie the brands with the people behind the brands so that people can basically connect with you. And that's where you mentioned about the power of storytelling that really helps you to build trust with your potential talents and at the same time to attract people who also share the same values to your organizations as well. Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of like quite a lot of things to talk about employer branding. So what I'm going to share with you, this is a gift. You can basically download the employer branding guide for SME leaders that you can use to give you some ideas on how you can start building your employer brand so that you can attract aligned talents, right talents to your organizations. I hope the session has been fruitful and insightful for you. And if there is any questions you may have or any clarification, feel free to just drop me a DM on LinkedIn. I create quite a bit of content there. And yeah, happy to take on some questions and happy to chat more with Kevin as well.
Mm. Right now, that's been absolutely brilliant. I'll leave the QR code for a few seconds because I'm sure people will be, really excited to be able to get this guide. Um, huge thank you for your insights. It's so enlightening, for I think any leader or SME leader that's out there to be able to hear from you and try and figure things out in their business and really focus on talent. So um, casually, we think about, I my background is a bit mixed. I was an accountant for a long time. I worked in recruitment for a long time, and now I've been in technology in the SME space for almost 10 years. Um, I don't think a lot of the challenges SMEs face, like hiring talent and retention, being one of the main ones, has been that different from when I started working 20 plus years ago in an SME. Um, What would you say to SMEs who what would you say to SMEs who feel the same? You know, like they feel like they've been repeating themselves around this challenge. Like what would be your advice like on how to start to actually address this?
Address what challenge?
The challenge of hiring talent and retention.
I
The
see.
number one tip. Yeah.
The number one tip. Okay, that's a tough question. I think it's really because, like what we mentioned earlier, like we are all competing with the same talent pools, right? And I think it's really about how can you make the approach a little bit more creative in such
Mhm.
a way that it's not the old ways of, you know, putting up a job posting, and getting people to apply and stuff like that, which usually take a long time, right? And I
Mhm.
think it's really about, the values of like what we mentioned earlier about, starting to get employees to also talk about your brand as well, right? It's part of the employee advocacy. How can
Mhm.
you get, of course, the happy employees, of course, to basically share about, yeah, share about your company with their friends, with their families as well, and that make it in such a way that like, oh yeah, I love to be part of your organizations.
Yeah.
And I think that's one part, like in terms of empowering employees to also advocate for the
Mhm.
organization brand. That's one. The interesting way of like creative ways of hiring as well. And I think nowadays I was being invited like not long ago, last year towards the end, by LinkedIn to actually write about how can you pay candidates to actually go for interview, right? And I think a lot
Oh
of time,
wow. Yeah.
yes, that's very interesting thoughts. And I think even a couple of my friends, right, they're actually willing to pay for the candidates to work on a certain project, like for example, a 3 days project,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
they just
Okay.
give them, like a token or like a project fee just to test out if if we are like aligned, if we are, like our working styles kind of like gel with each other, and if we are also like comfortable working with each other. And
Mm.
they basically, through that kind of way of hiring people, they manage to really get really good talents because they kind of
Yeah.
like test them out first, and they even pay them for such hiring.
For the
So,
piece of work. Yeah.
yes,
That's
exactly.
brilliant. Right. Like
Yeah.
that's quite clever.
Yeah.
Well, look, I we wanted to hammer home the point, right? Like of and you sharing your expertise, but we do actually have a lot of questions actually have come through. So we picked two. Thank you for the team behind the scenes. Um, the first one is, as a micro small business owner already struggling to keep the business afloat, what are some cost friendly initiatives I can implement to help boost employee retention? Great question, because I've spoken to many SMEs who, when they think about doing something for employee engagement, they tend to get put off it because of the cost.
Yeah.
You know, take people out for lunch or dinner or do an activity. Um, and that is a challenge because then what happens is they don't do it. Or they feel awkward asking, their staff to all get together and do something that's self-funded. But in
Mm.
actual fact, like one of the things, and I've worked in businesses where budgets for team initiatives were quite low. Um, I I would actually give people time back. So rather than saying to people, "Hey, let's go out for dinner on Thursday night and we'll try and cover the cost," um, I used to say, "Well, let's finish up early, and we'll take Thursday afternoon off, and we'll hang out together, and we'll go do an activity, and um, that could be actually just go to the park and bring a picnic, and everybody brings like a dish and things like that, and
Yeah.
that's quite a good feeling to it. I would probably struggle to do that in Singapore in the heat in the afternoon, but like it can be simple, and sometimes actually when I started to do things like that, people also appreciated that we did it during work hours and we took like give them a half day
Yeah.
rather than asking them to hang out with the boss and all their colleagues at nighttime, which most people are happy to do. But some were like, oh, cool, we can finish up after lunch on Thursday and go do an activity together and just simply like hang out away from the office. Um, we used to do things like picnics and bring like a Bluetooth speaker and have a laugh and very quickly people start to relax. So that's something that we used to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice.
Um.
And I think
Second.
just to add on
Mm,
as well, like, in terms of leveraging, like, the fund that Singapore government has given to every Singaporeans, like,
mm,
the skills future funding to
yeah. Yeah.
actually help them in upskilling themselves, right? When they feel themselves, when they feel they're actually growing in the companies, they're also much more willing to stay even longer as well.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's great. And then where the trade off, like where the business could help, is giving people the time to go to take those courses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if
Like and
in
saying,
fact the government also pays for some
yeah,
of the
yeah,
training allowance as well, I think
yeah.
Singapore is like the best government ever.
I agree, and I've worked in many countries where none of this stuff is available. So yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Um, so the question, this one is clearly for you. It's difficult to build an employer brand as a small business. What are some of the tips that you would give someone to be helpful?
Yeah, I think you shared a bit earlier as well in terms of
Mm,
leveraging storytelling, your unique stories, right? Your founder stories, because every small business has a unique stories to share. How can
mm,
you use that stories to be able to build trust, to be able to build connections with your
mm,
audience, your potential employees? I think that's very important. And I think, LinkedIn has been a good platform to really allows people to do that. And I think you probably may see that a lot more content creators in on LinkedIn, right? And I think that's a good way of really communicating, your
mm.
brand identity, your values, your missions, and to be able to also attract talents. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's one. And I think it's also important to engage with your community as well, like get
Mm,
involved in some kind of like local events or causes that also meaningful, right? And I
yeah.
think um, employees are much more willing to also contribute to such kind of cause as well, and they feel like, "Oh, okay, I actually contribute into something meaningful as
Mm,
well." And
yeah.
yeah, and I think last but not least is also like what I mentioned earlier about the employee advocacy, to really
Mm,
motivate your employees to also share their positive experiences and stories on their personal social media channels, so
mm,
that it brings a positive lights into the employer brand, right? And I
mm,
think it's interesting because I also see quite a number of trends that employers are actually reaching out to me to basically teach the employees how to create a, like, brand ambassadorship program to create authentic content, so that they can also share their own stories, and
mm,
also eventually built visibility and also contributed to their professional growth as well. And I
yeah.
think that's, we wanted to highlight that part, because a lot of times when employers feel a bit threatened when employees start creating content on LinkedIn, because like, okay, are you like trying to like look out for a new job or whatever? But I think it's really about having the spirit of like, hey, I'm creating content or even documenting my journey as part of like, building an employer brand, but at the same time to also increase visibility, so that I
Mm,
can, improve enhance my professional growth as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that last part is so interesting because that tends to be the first reaction.
Yeah.
some bosses that they're like, what's this person doing? I've now worked in some companies where we've been asked, like, and like heavily encouraged, to use LinkedIn and platforms, and some people choose not to do it, but I actually think it's brilliant, and I reckon for SMEs out there, I don't think I have a great LinkedIn presence, by the way, but I pick up a lead, I reckon, every week, one lead a week. And I have a team of almost 45 people in Singapore. They all post on LinkedIn and similar. Like they pick up leads because people are interested in what we're talking about and the story. I think we could be a lot better at it, but for SMEs, don't underestimate this storytelling channel. And don't be fearful of what your team might do, because they might leave if you don't allow them to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Especially some of the newer generation coming through. So, look, we're at the end of our session. Firstly, I want to say a huge thank you to Ratna. Her expertise and speciality in the space is so powerful. And for our listeners today, don't hold back from reaching out to Ratna. I hope you got a chance to download her report. And we will be having a lucky draw today, where one of our attendees will win a free line dance along with a sumptuous low hay set. So, in the spirit of Chinese New Year just around the corner, we want you to have a very prosperous 2024. We have dressed in the right appropriate attire for today to represent. And a huge thank you from both of us for listening in. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and thank you so much, everyone.